بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. عن عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها قالت إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي. So Amra is quoting from Aisha radiyallahu anha that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "In kana Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam la yusalli." That verily the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam would pray. So she uses the word in. Allama Zurqani rahimahullah in his commentary he explains بكسر الهمزة وإسكان النون that you read this with a kasra on the hamza and with a sakin on the noon. So in. So this here is in مخففة من الثقيلة. Allama Abu al-Walid al-Baji rahimahullah he says وإن مخففة من الثقيلة. That in it's mukhaffafa, it became light because it was originally inna, so it's mukhaffafa from the taqila, from the word inna. So basically this word in, it's derived from the word inna. It's made light. It's actually from the word inna. So it was originally inna, and then the tajdid was converted to a sukun to make it easy to pronounce. And that's how it became in. Alama Abu al-Qasim al-Zujaji, he explains 4 ways in which the word in is used. So he said, اعلم أن لئن المكسورة المخففة 4 مواضع. 4 ways that this word in with the sukun it's used. So the first way is تكون جزاء, that it will come to show outcome, a result. كقولك إن تكرمني أكرمك. If you honor me, if you are good to me, I will be good to you. I will honor you. So you can see that it's the result. The result of you doing this is I will do that. إن تزرني أحسن إليك. If you visit me, I will be good to you. So the result and the outcome of you visiting me. And to prove it from a verse of the Quran, وَإِن تُبْدُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ تُخْفُوهُ يُحَاسِبْكُم بِهِ اللَّهُ. That if you have to do something publicly or whether you hide it. So you can see now what's the result of it? يُحَاسِبْكُم بِهِ اللَّهُ. So that's the first meaning of the word in. The second meaning of the word in is وَتَكُونُ جَحْدًا بِمَنْزِلَةِ مَا. So this here it comes to show negative. وَتَقُولُ إِن زَيْدٌ قَائِمًا. So just like how you say مَا زَيْدٌ قَائِمًا, you want to say Zaid is not standing. So you want to show negative. So it comes in this meaning. So and you can also then bring it with the word illa. So you can say in Zaydun illa qa'imun. Like how you say ma Zaydun illa qa'imun. And in the Quran it comes like this here. Inil kafiruna illa fi ghurur. So this here is the second meaning. The third meaning is watakunu zaida. That it has no meaning. It's just extra. كما تقول لما إن جاء زيد أحسنت إليه. So here it's lamma in ja'a zaydun. You can even drop off the word in. It has no additional meaning. والمعنى لما جاء زيد. So wa in zaida. The in here it's extra. So that's the third meaning. So then he explains that these 3 meanings here في هذه الوجوه الثلاثة قائمة بنفسها لا يلزمها شيء. That it can come alone. You don't have to bring any additional word. You don't have to bring extra support for it. The word in can come alone in the sentence for these 3 meanings. Then he explains the 4th meaning and he says وَذَلِكَ أَن تَكُونْ مُخَفَّفَ مِنَ الثَّقِيلَ. And that's how it's being used in the sentence. That it was actually what a tajdid inna, but then you put the sukun to make it easier to pronounce. Now this raises a question that we're saying that inna is that this word in actually comes from the word inna. And you know, you learn from first year, isn't that inna, does it come on nouns or does it come on verbs? It comes on nouns, isn't? You remember inna, anna, ka'anna. What's the words of hidayat al-nahwa? فصل خبر إن وأخواتها وهي أن وكأن ولكن وليت ولعل فهذه الحروف تدخل على المبتدأ والخبر. Can you remember? So فهذه الحروف تدخل على المبتدأ والخبر. It comes on a mubtada and a khabar. It comes on a noun, isn't that a mubtada? What's a mubtada? It's a noun. So the objection is that if this word in is in place of the word inna, then how can it come before a verb? Because inna can't come before a verb. It ought to come before a noun. Because it's just like representing the word inna. You had the word inna there, you took off the word inna and you're putting the word in. So now the remaining portion of the sentence ought to remain the same. So it ought to be before a noun, isn't it? So the objection is that how then in this narration, what's the word after in? It's a verb. So how can the word in come before a verb? So the answer to this here is that even though the word inna can only be used before a noun, when it's converted to in mukhaffafa, then it can come before a jumla ismiya, and it can also come before a jumla fi'liya. It can come before a noun, and it can also come before a verb. So Allama Zujaji rahimahullah, he explains, وجاز وقوع الفعل بعدها لأنها إذا خففت بطل عملها ووقع بعدها الابتداء والخبر والأفعال. That sense now it's no more altering the i'rab. So we'll explain this principle just now. That when it's converted from inna to in, when it's converted from thaqila to khafifa, or from the tajdeed to a sukun, then it now no more alters the i'rab. So because it's no more changing the i'rab, it can now come before a ism, it can come before a noun, and it can also come before a verb. And from this, we can also learn one principle of life, that if we are not very fussy and want everyone else to change for us, then we will be accommodated everywhere. So you can see this word in, it doesn't want to it doesn't want to change the next word. So therefore, the fi'al is also welcoming it. It can come before a fi'al also. It can also come before a noun. So you don't try to change everyone according to your temperament. Obviously, you try to change to good. Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyiru biyadihi. That's separate. But you don't try to change everyone else according to your temperament. Then Allama Zujaji, he presented some verses of the Quran to prove the siyam. So he says, وَمِثْلُ ذَلِكَ قَوْلُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَإِن كُنْتَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ لَمِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ. Do any of you know where this here comes? In which surah this comes? Yes, mashallah. So this here is the third verse of Surah Yusuf. And likewise, Tallahi in kittal laturdin, mashallah, Allahumma zid fazil. So he says that kullu hadha mukhaffaf min kullu hadha mukhaffaf min at-thaqila. In kitta and in kunta, it was actually supposed to be inna, but you can see it's coming before a verb. So there are two aspects which are very common when this in mukhaffafa comes before a verb. As you can see in this narration, the verb it's madi, isn't? So most of the time, remember we're saying most of the time, we're not saying all the time. There's a difference between most of the time and all the time. So most of the time the verb will be in the past tense. وَالْأَكْثَرْ كَوْنُ الْفَعْلِ مَاضِيًا. Most of the time. So there are those few occasions when in mukhaffafa can also come before a before the present tense, before mudari'. In verse number 186 of Surah Shu'ara, وَمَا أَنْتَ إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُنَا وَإِنَّ ظُنُّكَ. So you can see it's coming, نَظُنُّكَ, it's coming before a mudari'. So that's the first law, that mostly it will come before a madi, but at times it will come before a mudari'. In this narration, it comes before a madi because this is how it happens most of the time. Then the second law, when this in comes before a fi'al, is that it will generally come before a fi'al, a nasikh, which is also called as a fi'al naqis. So you probably remember what's a fi'al nasikh. Af'alun nasikha are those words which are those verbs which enter upon a mubtada in a khabar. So after a verb, you're supposed to get the fa'il or the maf'ul, isn't? But when you get a mubtada or a khabar, then this here is now considered as a af'alun, a fi'al nasikh. So the words like kana wa akhawatuha, likewise af'alu dhan, af'alu raja, etc. So you remember all of this. Kana wa akhawatuha, kana sara asbaha amsaha dhalla ba'ta ma zala ma bariha ma zala ma dama ma fati'a ma bariha man fakka laysa. All of these words. And then kada wa akhawatuha, so those 14 verbs, and then those are subdivided into af'alu raja and muqaraba and shuru'. And then you have dhanna wa akhawatuha, so those are 13 verbs, and they are called af'alul rujhan and af'alul yaqeen. So the in mukhaffafa, it generally, so again remember, generally, not all the time, generally and commonly, most of the time, it comes before these 41 verbs. So there are times when it also comes before other verbs. So therefore, Ibn Mālik rahimahullah, he mentions in his Alfiya, وَالْفَعْلُ إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ نَاسِخًا فَلَا تُلْفِيهِ غَالِبًا. You can see, فَلَا تُلْفِيهِ غَالِبًا بِإِنْ ذِي مُوصَلَةٍ. والفعل إن لم يكن ناسخا فلا تلفيه غالبا بإن ذي مصلة. That it will have to be from the أفعال ناسخة commonly. Then the in will come before those kind of verbs. In the commentary of the Alfiya Badruddin, Abu Muhammad Hassan ibn al-Qasim al-Muradi passed away in the year 749 Hijri. So he explains these 2 points that I just told you. That إذا خففت إن, that when the word inna is now changed into a sukun, فالغالب فيها, again you can see, commonly, most of the time, أي يليها فعل ناسخ للابتداء. So like for example, verse number 143 of Surah Baqarah, وإن كانت لكبيرة. So you can see this here is from the أفعال الناسخة. Likewise, وإن كادوا ليفتنونك. So this here is in Surah Isra, verse number 73, isn't? And then وإن وجدنا أكثرهم لفاسقين, Surah A'raf, verse number 102. And thereafter he quotes from Ibn Malik that he mentioned in his Sharh al-Tasheel, ولا يكون غالبا إلا بلفظ الماضي. Most of the time it will come with the ماضي. And then he explains it. وأشار بقوله غالبا إلى أنه قد يليها فعل غير ناسخ. So this is the point which we're saying, that by him mentioning the word غالبا, it shows that there are times when the fi'l will not be nasikh. It won't be from those what I just quoted to you. And then he presents poetry to prove this here. شلت يمينك إن قتلت لمسلما. So this here is the poetry of Atika bint Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl al-Qurashiyya when she was addressing and cursing Amr ibn Jurmuz because he killed her husband Zubair ibn al-Awam. So the complete poem is شلت يمينك إن قتلت لمسلما حلت عليك عقوبة المتعمد. That may your right hand be paralyzed, you have killed a Muslim. حلت عليك عقوبة المتعمد. And because of this here, it was an intentional killing. So ومن يقتل مؤمنا متعمدا فجزاؤه جهنم خالدا فيها إذن. So that's the punishment is going to come upon you. So in this narration of the Muwatta, we can see that the verb fulfills both conditions. It is in the past tense also, and it is nasikh. Now when this in mukhaffafa comes before a noun, now then we mentioned that it no more changes the i'rab of the mubtada and the khabar. So you learned in the first year that's ahruful mushabbaha bil fi'l, that it changes the mubtada to a fatha. So we are quoting from Hidayatul Nahwa, fatunsabu al-mubtada, and thereafter it comes to tarfa'ul khabar. It gives the mubtada a fatha, and it gives the it gives the mubtada a fatha, and it gives the khabar a raf'a. So this here is generally when the word inna comes. But when you convert it to mukhaffafa, then it no more alters the i'rab. So now both the mubtada and the khabar will remain as marfu'. An example of this here is verse number 32 of Surah Yasin. وَإِن كُلٌّ لَمَّا جَمِيعٌ لَدَيْنَا مُحْضَرُونَ. So you can see it remained as kullun. It didn't change to kullan. And this again is only most of the time. So Ibn Hisham, he says, وَتُخَفَّفْ فَتُعْمِلُ قَلِيلًا وَتُهْمِلُ كَثِيرًا. So again, you pay attention that he's saying قَلِيلًا فَتُعْمِلُ قَلِيلًا. There are those few odd times when it will change the i'rab. But otherwise, وَتُهْمِلُ كَثِيرًا, most of the time, it will not change the i'rab. So the important words of this here is قَلِيلًا and كَثِيرًا. That sometimes it will, there are those few occasions when it will change the i'rab, but most of the time, it will not change the i'rab. So Ibn Malik he writes, وَخُفِّفَتْ إِنَّ فَقَلَّ الْعَمَلُ. That inna becomes light, it becomes mukhaffafa, it becomes in, and then it changes the i'rab very little, it governs very less. Allama Suyuti rahmallah, he wrote in Ham'ul Hawami', وَتُخَفَّفْ فَتُهْمِلُ غَالِبًا. That most of the time it will not change the i'rab. So as I mentioned, there are those odd times when it will change the i'rab. For example, if you look at verse number 111 of Surah Hud, we read it as وَإِنَّ كُلًّا, isn't? But according to the qira'ah of Imam Nafi' and Ibn Kathir, they read it as وَإِن كُلًّا لَمَا. Okay, so don't worry about the lama for now. وَإِن كُلًّا. So you can see they're reading it as mukhaffafa. We read it as generally وَإِنَّ كُلًّا. But they're reading it as وَإِن كُلًّا. So they, although they are mentioning it as in, but they're still making the next word be kullan. They're not saying we're in kullun. And Imam Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, he also narrated with a sukoon on the noon from Imam Asim. Abu Amr and Kasa'i, they recited with the tashdid, وَإِنَّ كُلًّا أَلَمَا. So Alama Ash-Shatibi, rahimahullah, he said, وَفِي سَعِدُوا فَضْمُمْ سِحَابًا وَصَلْبِهِ وَخِفُّ وَإِن كُلًّا إِلَى صَفْوِهِ دَلَا. So basically, وَفِي سَعِدُوا, this is about the previous verse that you can read. سَعِدُوا with a dhamma is سُعِدُوا. So he says, oh, Hamza and Kisa'i and Hafs, they read it with a dhamma. Now, those of you who are not Qurra, you might be wondering that in this poem I just quoted وَفِي سَعِدُوا فَضْمُمْ سِحَابًا, I didn't take any name. So when I'm translating it, how am I saying that according to Hamza and Kisa'i and Hafs? If those of you who are not Qurra, you can ask those who are Qurra and they will explain to you how I got these names. You know, in South Africa, we say that I'm not thumb sucking. So thumb sucking, this here means that when you make up something, that you suck something out of your thumb. So in one of the lessons of Nuzhatun Nazar, I used this word thumb sucking, that we're not thumb sucking. So then one of those who were typing out the notes, the lesson, they're typing it out, they now seeing that I mentioned thumb sucking. So they went to go Google it, wondering what's the thumb sucking, thumb sucking. Then after so much research, they tell me they can't find the meaning of thumb sucking. So the Qurra of the group, they'll explain to you how we get this meaning of these names. You know, Mullah Fazlur Rahman in his durus, he always say, na jane wala ko, jane wale se sikna chahiye. That you go and you learn from those who know. Actually, rather to make it easy for you, so let me just quote for you a proof so that maybe it can give you some insight on the rumuz of Alama Shatibi. So Ibn al-Qasih, he says, Lil mushar ilayhim bistihab. You notice in this poem, I said, وَفِي سَعِدُوا فَضْمُمْ سِحَابًا. So the word sihaban, it's an indication. But the word siham, Lil mushar ilayhim bistihab, Hamza wal Kasa'i wa Hafs. فَتَعَيَّنَ لِلْبَاقِينَ الْقِرَاءَ بِفَتْحِهَا. So they will read it as su'idu, and the others will read it as sa'idu. Then in the stanza, Alama Shadbi rahimahullah, he mentions that وَسَلْبِهِ وَخِفُ وَإِن كُلًّا إِلَى صَفْوِهِ دَلَا. So here again, that now how are we going to get the names, that who is it being referred to? So here you take the first letters of ilah, and then asafwihi, and then dala. So Ibn al-Qasih, he mentioned, he mentions this in Siraj al-Qari al-Mubtadi wa Tizkar al-Muqri al-Muntahi on page 253. ثم أخبر أن المشار إليهم بالهمز, so إلى والصاد in صفوه, والدال في قوله إلى صفوه دلا هم نافع وشعبة وابن كثير. So this here is just to give you a bit of an overview on how Shatibiyah works, that it works with all these kind of rumuz that you have to understand which Qurra are being mentioned. So Abu Shama al-Dimashqi, he mentions in his commentary of Shatibiyah, Ibraz al-Ma'ani min Hirz al-Amani, he quotes from Alama Sibway, حدثنا من نثق به أنه سمع من العرب من يقول إن عمرا لمنطلق. So you can see in umran. So yeah, it's changing the i'rab. That's the point which we are trying to show, that is how according to their qira'ah, if they saying wa in kullal lama, that they say wa in, I told you we'll talk about lama just now, wa in kullan, so they changing the i'rab. So Sibway writes in another book that هذا باب آخر من أبواب إن وذلك قولك قد قاله القوم حتى إن زيدا يقوله. So you can see that yeah, it's in, but it's altering the i'rab. Likewise, وانطلق القوم حتى إن زيدا لمنطلق. So he mentions this here in the book. The name of the book is called Al-Kitab Lis-Sibway. So this is the one law, that generally it will not change the i'rab, but there are those few occasions, even in the Quran, according to Qurra, it did change the i'rab. And then another law which applies when inna is made mukhaffaf and now it's read as in, is that a lam has to be added. So this lam is known as lam fariqa. So you can see here, la yusalli. So this lam, now it shows you that the in, it's become light, it's become mukhaffaf from the word inna, and therefore it is used to emphasize. So Alama Abu al-Qasim al-Zujaji, he wrote, وَالدَّلِيلُ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهَا مُخَفَّفَ مِنَ الثَّقِيلَةِ لُزُومُ اللَّامِ فِي الْخَبَرِ. You have to bring, it's compulsory to bring this lam in the khabar. We'll explain exceptions just now, but for now just know that it's compulsory. The general ruling is that it's compulsory. You have, if you bring it in, then you have to bring a lam there after. So Alama Abu al-Qasim al-Zujaji, he writes this in his book Al-Lamat. Imagine this whole book is just dedicated to the letter lam. all the different meanings of lam. So if you want to know all the different meanings of lam, then you just refer to this one book. It will tell you that lam can come in this meaning and this meaning and this meaning. You know, Sharh Amil, my favorite kitab in first year. Those of you who didn't study it, you must inshallah read it. So that's chapters on the wording. But this is an entire book, Al-Lamat. So in this narration, you can see that there's a verb here, but after the word in, you have the alam. So Allama Suyuti Rahmallah is explaining now in his commentary, وَاسْمُهَا ضَمِيرُ الشَّأْنِ مَحْذُوفٌ, that the antecedent is the ضمير الشأن, which is omitted. وَاللَّامْ فِي لَيُصَلِّي هِيَ اللَّامُ الْفَارِقَةِ, that this lam which comes on the word لَيُصَلِّي. So you can see there on the word لَيُصَلِّي, there's a lam there. This lam is called lamul fariqa. And what's the reason of this here? الداخل في خبر in. It comes in the khabar of the word in, فرقا بين المخفف والنافية. So this is the reason. This is why this lam is so important, because we said now that the in mukhaffafa doesn't alter the i'rab, isn't? So if it doesn't alter the i'rab, then what can happen? It can happen that, and we mentioned the four meanings of the word in. One of the meaning was jahdan, isn't? You wrote it down, inshallah. So it mustn't be confused with nafi, because then that's going to be the total opposite. If you have in and you have the lam, you're stressing the point, you're emphasizing it. But if you have in without the lam, you are negating it, absolute opposite. So for example, if I say in Zaydun qa'imun, so now that the listener is going to be confused. I said in Zaydun qa'imun, did I say Zayd is not standing because it's in the meaning of nafi? Or would it mean that I'm saying most definitely Zayd is standing? Complete opposite. So it's going to become now so confusing for the listener, because the entire meaning is going to be changed. So the person who you're talking to now is not going to know whether you're talking positive or whether you're talking negative. So therefore, you need to bring this lam. Allama Zujaji, he explains this point. ألا ترى أنك لو قلت إن زيد قائم وأنت تريد الإجاب لم يكن بينها وبين النافية فرق. That the listener is not going to understand now whether you are positive, or whether you are saying the positive, or whether you are saying the negative, whether you're saying that he's standing or whether you're saying that he is not standing. So therefore, you have to bring this lam. This lam, it's called lam farika, and that is why it's called farika, because it distinguishes, it differentiates between the positive and the negative. So Allama al-Yawsi rahimahullah, he gives the example. فَإِذَا قُلْتَ إِن زَيْدٌ لَقَائِمٌ فَهِيَ تَأْكِيد. When you're saying in, now whether you're saying you want to change the i'rab or you don't want to change the i'rab, that's immaterial. In Zaydun or in Zaydan. But you bring in that lam, the listener will immediately know that now this is for tawkid. Most definitely Zayd is standing. But وَإِذَا قُلْتَ إِن زَيْدٌ قَائِمٌ وَأَسْقَطْتَ اللَّامَ فَهِيَ نَفْيٌ بِمَعْنَى مَا زَيْدٌ قَائِمٌ. Now the listener is going to understand that you intend nafi, that you intend saying that he is not standing. So referring back to that verse that I quoted earlier, وَإِن كُلَّ, so we explained about in. Now this word lamma, so in our qira'ah we read it as lamma, but others they recite it as lama. So that's the reason why they're reciting it as lama. They're not putting the tashdid, is because they are regarding this lam to be a lam fariqa. That's just like how the lam is coming in the meaning of this narration. In that same meaning, they are taking this lam. So this here is according to the qira'ah of most of the qurra of Medina, and most of the qurra of Basra, and also some of the qurra of Kufa. And then in contrast to that, Ibn Amir and A'mash and Asim and Hamza and Khalaf and Abu Ja'far, they recited what they tajdeed as lamma. So they did it with the tajdeed in all of these verses where it comes. So whether it's verse number 111 of Surah Hud, or whether it's verse number 32 of Surah Yasin, or whether it's verse number 4 of Surah Tariq, lamma alayha hafiz. They read it with the تجديد. So in Shatbiyya it comes وفيها وفي ياسين والطارق العلا يشدد لما كامل نفس فاعتلا. So it means that here in Surah Yasin and in Surah Tariq. So now I told you this rumuz, so you can understand that the rumuz, it shows that Ibn Amir and Asim and Hamza, they recited what the tashdid. And then I told you that Abu Bakr, he recited as in, isn't? So the word in is reciting it with a sukun. But here he's putting the tashdid on lamma. So for those of you who studied qira'ah, the easy way to remember all of this here, you must be able to read tarawih in different qira'at. So the easy way to remember it is that you have takhfif on both. So it's in and lamma. So that's the one way. Second way of reading it is tashdid on both inna and lamma. The third way of reading it is takhfif on the first and tashdid on the second. So in and lamma. So this here is how I told you now that it's also transmitted from Asim like this here. And then the fourth way of reading it is tashdid on the first and takhfif on the second. So inna and then lama. So now according to so basically the point we're trying to show is that Islam Fariqa has been used in the Quran as well, because they made takhfif on the first, they read it as in, just like how it comes in this narration, and then they read it as lama. So according to the recitation of those who make takhfif on the first, they say in, and then they make tashdid on lamma. So then they have the opinion that this in now comes for jahdan, it comes for negation. And then they say the word lamma, it comes in the meaning of illa. So Ulama Tabari rahimahullah, he explains, والآخر أن يكونوا أرادوا أن تكون لما بمعنى إلا. So the word lama, because we said that those who are saying lama, they are taking it to be the lam fariqa. So maybe this question comes in your mind. Okay, if it's lama, then it's lam fariqa. So now if it's lamma, then what's the meaning? So then they say that it comes in the meaning of illa. But it comes in the meaning of illa ma'a in khasatan. You can only bring it in this meaning if you have the word in. So this here is how they explain it. And then he explains that وَكَانَ بَعْضُ أَهْلِ الْعَرَبِيَّةِ يَقول لَا أَعْرِفُ وَجْهَ لَمَّا بِالتَّجْدِيد. That some scholars in Arabic, they say that they can't understand how lamma can be correct in Arabic. But then he explains وَالصَّوَامِ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ فِي ذَلِكَ عِنْدِي أَنَّهُمَا قِرَاءَتان مَشْهُورَتان مُتَقَارِبَةَ الْمَعْنَى. That both of this here, this qira'at are established. So therefore it has to be read like this here. And obviously now there's so many other details. If you go in the books of tafsir, you'll see there's explanations on how this word lamma is used. Whether it's, you can see some are saying that it's not correct to say lamma, but we're all reading it as lamma, isn't? So you can go read all of that. This is just a simple basic explanation. We obviously need to explain much more. We're not doing the tafsir of that verse. Now the question arises that why did we put this lam here when we want to show ta'keed? Why we didn't put this lam on nafi? The reason we want to create the distinction. So why give preference to tawkeed and then put the lam? Why not put the lam and say that when the lam comes on nafi, then it will show that it's in the negative? So the answer to that is that the lam is to emphasize the positive. So it's the total opposite of negative. So this lam, it comes in a meaning of most definitely. It's also giving you this meaning of tawkeed. Now, with regards to the ruling of this lam, so earlier I mentioned that it's compulsory, isn't? You have to mention it. So Abul Qasim al-Zujaji in the same book, so although he does not call it lam fariqa, but he's talking about the same lam. He says bab al-lam allati talzam in al-maksura al-khafifa min al-thaqila. So talking about the same lam, he then explains walazimatha al-lam fil khamr, that it's compulsory, you have to bring this lam. ولم يجوز حذف اللام في الخبر. It's not permissible to omit the lam in the khabar لألا, so that it does not then resemble نافية. And then he says ألا ترى أنك لو قلت إن زيد قائم وأنت تريد الإجاب لم يكن بينها وبين النافية فرق فألزمت اللام في الخبر لذلك. So that is why it is compulsory. So he's mentioning that it's compulsory. And Ibn Mālik rahimahullah, he also said وخففت إن فقل العمل وتلزم اللام إذا ما تهمل. So he's also saying that it is compulsory. Allama al-Yawsi rahimahullah, he also mentions that واللام لازمة لخبرها, that it's necessary, you have to bring this lam ليفرق بينها وبين إن التي بمعنى ما, so that you can create this distinction. And because of all of this here, Mulana Zakaria Kanlawi rahimahullah, he mentions in his commentary وَاللَّامُ لَازِمَةٌ فِي خَبَرِهَا. So definitely this here is correct, that it is necessary, but we should realize that there are exceptions. So Ibn Mālik rahimahullah, he then says وَرُبَّمَا اسْتُغْنِيَ عَنْهَا إِنْ بَدَى مَا نَاطِقٌ أَرَادَهُ مُعْتَمِدًا. That sometimes you don't have to bring the salam. And when is that? إِنْ بَدَى مَا نَاطِقٌ أَرَادَهُ مُعْتَمِدًا. That when you understand, it's very clear, it's very evident what the a person who's talking, what he is saying. That now you're not going to doubt that he is intending the positive. That you will know definitely he's intending the positive, even if he doesn't bring the lam. So if the listener will understand that you're intending the positive, then you don't have to bring the lam. So in Al-Janaddani, Badruddin Muradi, he first quotes from Allama Zarkashi, from Allama Zamakhshari, that هذه اللام لازمة في خبر إن إذا خففت, it is compulsory. But thereafter, Badruddin Muradi, he says إنما تلزم إذا ألغيت إن ولم يكن في الكلام قرينة. فإن so he's saying that when there's no qarina in the kalam to show you that he's intending positive, but he's saying that if there is some qarina, so for example, maybe it altered the i'rab, because when it comes in the meaning of nafi, then it can't alter the i'rab. So you'll have to say in Zaydun qa'imun, definitely it means that Zayd is not standing. But if you alter the i'rab, we said there are those few occasions when you can change the i'rab. When you say in Zaydan qa'imun, then it will be positive. So that's is an indication. So because you change the i'rab, so now the listener will understand that you intend that most definitely Zayd is standing. So this is one occasion when you don't have to bring the lam. That when you change the i'rab, then you don't have to bring the lam, because the listener will understand that you intend that most definitely he is standing. Oh, dalla dalilun ala al-murad. Or there's a clear evidence to show that that you intend the positive. So then he says that he gives some poetry, and this here is poetry of Tarimah ibn al-Hakim. He mentions it in his Diwan on page 512. That أنا ابن أبات الضيم من آل مالك وإن مالك كانت كرام المعادن. So can you see here? He said وإن مالك. He didn't even change the i'rab, but after that he didn't bring the lam. So أنا ابن أبات الضيم من آل مالك. So he wants to show that I am the son of those who refuse oppression from the children of Malik. So you want to show his strength, you want to show his power. I'm not going to allow you to oppress me. وَإِن مَالِكٌ. Thereafter he said that no one is now going to understand here that he's intending nafi, that Malik does not have noble origin. Rather, he's talking of praise, isn't he? His intention is to boast and to show that we are so strong. So he's saying, وَإِن مَالِكٌ كَانَتْ كَرَامَ الْمَعَادِنِ. So even though the lamb was not brought, it's still understood. So when the listener will understand that you intend positive, even though you did not change the i'rab, and even though you did not bring the lam, then it's fine. You don't have to bring the lam. So to summarize all of this here, that under general circumstances, the lam is compulsory. But there are those occasions when the listener can understand the meaning from the context, and he will know that this here is positive with emphasis. Then in that case, you don't have to bring the lam. So now to show that you only need to bring the salam when there is the fear of the listener not understanding it, look at how Allama Suyuti phrased it. He said, وَتَلْزَمُ اللَّامْ إِنْ خِيفَ لُبْسٌ بِالنَّافِيَةِ. That if you fear that the listener is going to confuse it with the negative, then only it is compulsory. So coming to the hadith, the lam has been added because there is fear of confusing it with a negative. That in kana yusalli, it probably would have been that the Prophet ﷺ would not perform salah. So therefore, it was necessary in this narration to bring this lam. And therefore, Aisha radiallahu anha mentioned the lam. The next words in this narration are فَيَنْصَرِفُ النِّسَاءُ. Then the females would go away. Now in this narration of the Muwatta, if you look here, the verb, it's mudhakkar, isn't it? It's masculine. But then what comes after that? An-nisa. So is nisa mudhakkar or mu'annath? Obviously nisa is mu'annath. So the fa'il is mu'annath, an-nisa. But the verb it's wahid mudhakkar ghaib, fayansarifu an-nisa. So this is how most of the students of Imam Malik rahimahullah transmitted it. Fayansarifu an-nisa. However, when Yahya ibn Bukair, so you remember Yahya ibn Yahya, that the other Yahya was from the east, when he's transmitting this from Imam Malik rahimahullah, then he brought the verb also in a Jama' Mu'annath Sigha. So in his transmission of the Muwatta, it comes فَيَنْصَرِفْنَ النِّسَاءُ. So this is how it is in his manuscript. If you want, I'll post the picture of the makhtut of his manuscript on the group. Only, but you should be able to understand how he wrote his noons. Otherwise, you'll confuse it. Then you'll see that in his manuscript, he clearly wrote فَيَنْصَرِفْنَ النِّسَاءُ. And Allama Batal-Yawsi rahmallah, he also quoted it from him. He said, وَفِي رِوَايَةِ ابن بكير فَيَنْصَرِفْنَ عَلَى لَفْظِ الْجَمْعِ. But Yahya ibn Yahya, he's mentioning it, he's quoting it as فَيَنْصَرِفُ النِّسَاءُ. So now whose is more correct? So we have the two Yahyas, they are differing. So between the transmission and the riwayah of Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi and Yahya ibn Yahya ibn Bukair, the method that is transmitted here by Yahya al-Laythi, this here is the more accurate method according to most of the Arabian dialects. So Allama Batal-Yawsi rahmallah, he said, وَالْأَكْثَرْ الْأَفْصَحْ الْإِفْرَادِ. That more common And afsah, it's that you bring it in the singular, the mudhakkar and the singular. The verb must be mudhakkar also, and it must be in the singular also. So this here is the general ruling in Arabic according to most of the Arabian tribes and all the different dialects, that it must be wahid mudhakkar, even though the fa'il is a jama' mu'annath, or even if it's a jama' mudhakkar. Basically, if the fa'il is jama', the verb, and the verb comes first, then more afsah, according to most dialects, is that you will bring a wahid mudhakkar. The verb must be wahid mudhakkar. But now the way Yahya ibn Bukayr transmitted, it will be correct according to the dialect of the people of Tay. So the tribe of Tay, they believe that the fa'il is if the fa'il is jama' mu'annath, then the verb also must be jama' mu'annath. And they have proof. So if you look at the following poem, ولكن ضيافي أبوه وأمه بحوران يعصرن الصليط أقاربه. So you can see يعصرن, and the fa'il of it is أقاربه. So yeah, it's being used in the jama'. The verb is also in the jama'. So Badruddin al-Muradi explains, فالنون في عصرنا حرف يدل على التأنيث والجمع. Yeah, the verb is being brought also as jama' also and as mu'annath also. And then there's one hadith, one narration from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he used the dialect of this tribe. So in النهاية في غريب الأثر, Ibn al-Athir rahmallah, he quotes a narration, إنه تلده أمه فيحملن النساء. So you can see يحملن, it's mu'annath also and it's jama' also. So although Ibn al-Athir rahmallah, he quotes this hadith, unfortunately we were unable to find this here at any of the books at our disposal. But from the more popular narrations, you can see that the verb is coming and then the fa'il is a jama'. So Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he narrates, and this here comes in Bukhari and Muslim, يتعاقبون. So you can see this here is jama', isn't يتعاقبون فيكم ملائكة بالليل وملائكة بالنهار. So malaika, it's jama', but the fi'l is also a jama'. So this shows that both transmissions from Imam Malik rahmallah would be correct, whether you are going according to the manuscript of or according to the transmissions of most of the students of Imam Malik, and you say فينصرف النساء, or whether you are going according to the transmission of Yahya ibn Bukayr and you say فينصرف النساء, both are correct. That's with regards to the verb. Then the word nisa is used. So this word nisa, Alama Qastallani rahmallah, he mentions in Irshad al-Sari, jam'u imra'a, la wahida lahu min lafzihi. That the singular of it is the word imra'a, and there is no wahid for it, which resembles the word nisa. So it's imra'a and then nisa. You don't have a wahid which has the root letters, the noon and the sin, etc. The next word is mutalaffifatin. So it's written متلففات because of the scale which is coming, but it's actually بالنصب على الحالية. It's in حالة النصب because it's the hal. This is how it's mentioned in عون المعبود in volume 2 on page 65. So متلففات, what's the meaning of متلففات? It means they were covered and they were wrapped. Now in this print of the Muwaṭṭa, we find that it is written as متلففات. And this here is correct. This is how it is in the transmission of Yahya al-Laythi. Likewise, in the Maknas print also it comes as mutalaffifat. So Ibn Abd al-Barr rahimahullah and Alama Abu al-Walid al-Baji, the two pioneers, the two main transmitters of the two main commentators of the Muwaṭṭa, and the two main Maliki scholars who explain the Muwaṭṭa, both of them said, وَأَمَّا قَوْلُهُ مُتَلَفِّفَات بِالْفَاء. So with the fa, mutalaffifat. فهي رواية Yahya. Most definitely, this is how Yahya al-Laythi quoted it from Imam Malik rahimahullah. وَتَابَعَهُ جَمَاعَةٌ. And he does have support. He's not the only one who's transmitting it from Imam Malik rahimahullah like this. There is support from him. Alama Batal Yosi rahimahullah, he also confirms that most definitely this is how Yahya al-Laythi is quoting it from Imam Malik rahimahullah. وَقَعَ فِي رِوَايَةِ يَحْيَى بِفَاءٍ. That it comes mutalaffifat, two fas. Fa, mutalaffifat. So two fas. This is how Yahya al-Laythi transmitted it. And this is how it comes in most of the accurate manuscripts of the Muwaṭṭa. If you go to all the different makhtutat, you don't have to go to the makhtutat. Look here in the footnotes, you can see it's written fil asl wa jim متلففات بفاء. So therefore in the text they also wrote it as متلففات. But there are those few manuscripts of the transmission of Yahya which has the words متلفعات. So fa and then ain, متلفعات. So you can see وبهامشها متلفعات وفوقها خاء وفي باء متلفعات. So this here is in the footnote of page 142. So they saying that it comes in the meaning that Yahya quoted from Imam Malik in their, when they were writing the Muwatta, they wrote it as متلفعات. Now there could be a difference between متلفعات and متلففات, and it might have a very great impact on the meaning of this narration. So we're going to discuss that shortly, inshallah. But now you can just understand that from Yahya al-Laythi, there are differences. Yes, more accurately, the Maliki scholars, the most senior commentators of the Muwatta, they are telling us that no, Yahya, he definitely transmitted it as mutalaffifat. But there are those few, when they were writing the Muwatta, obviously they were writing it from either being transmitted to them, or either it was being copied from one from another copy, which was being copied from another copy, which ultimately reached to Yahya ibn Yahya. So they saying no, that it's not written as mutalaffifat and it's actually mutalaffi'at. Now, if you write on your page in Arabic mutalaffi'at, you can see that mutalaffi'at and mutalaffifat, when you are writing it, especially if you have to dip your pen in ink and then write, it's a very, very subtle difference. It's just missing a dot, and in the past they wouldn't even write the dot. So mutalaffi'at can very easily be mistaken for mutalaffifat. But nevertheless, because the Maliki commentators told us that Yahya al-Laythi transmitted it as mutalaffifat, that's what we're going to explain that. We're going to accept that, sorry. So now please write down these two words. Write down mutalaffi'at and write down mutalaffifat. Because we need to explore what are the correct words that Aisha radiallahu anha used. So maybe if you want to, you can write them as headings, or write them in such a way that at least you can then add names after them. That who transmitted it as mutalaffifat, and who transmitted it as mutalaffi'at. So you know, yesterday I stressed, isn't that this narration is being quoted, it's being transmitted by fuqaha. So I'm stressing that point not because it's going to strengthen the Maliki madhab. I'm proving to you Yahya ibn Sa'id, Amra, they're all fuqaha, because this here is the clear proof for Hanafis. So you understand now that the person can't just open one kitab, read one sanad, see one wording, doesn't even know what comes in the makhtutat, and then he comes and go make big claims that the Hanafis don't know anything in hadith. So I'm going to prove to you now that it's actually the Hanafis, that if anything, Hanafis are the ones who are practicing on this narration more than anyone else. So don't cover your mind by looking at the word mutalaffifat. So the intelligent from among you, they will understand what I meant by the sentence. I refer to this type of sentences as the Sheikh Sab style. Sheikh Mahfuz Rahman, he like to talk like this here. So don't cover your mind or don't cover your eyes by looking only at the word mutalaffifat. So we're going to show now that this here is actually strong proof. It's actually we're pulling it out of the Muwatta, and it's showing it's we're pulling it out of Bukhari and Muslim, and it's actually coming as proof for the Hanafis. So you know, like in the second hadith that we read, the Hanafi explanation isn't it blended in with so many other narrations. And then yesterday I told you that even that one narration from Sahih Bukhari, I forgot to tell you. So that also it blends in with the narration of Sahih Bukhari. So in this, in the same way, this narration here, it's going to cover all the different narrations. So they say that we don't practice on hadith, but they don't realize that they are practicing on apparent words of famous ahadith. But in doing that, they are omitting and they are discarding so many other narrations in the mix. And we as Hanafis, alhamdulillah, we are practicing on all the ahadith. So nevertheless, so write mutalaffifat and write mutalaffi'at and leave space so that you can write who transmitted it as mutalaffifat and who transmitted it as mutalaffi'at. So Yahya ibn Yahya, he is narrating this from Imam Malik using the word mutalaffifat. Now let's see, okay, we have here now Yahya ibn Yahya. Now how are others transmitting it from Imam Malik? So first let's go to the Maliki. I told you that Allama ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah, they are very, very great transmitters of the Muwatta. So we definitely honor them. Look how we are accepting what they say. So let's see what they tell us. How did the others narrate from Imam Malik? When they were quoting this here, how did they quote it? So Allama ibn Abdul Barr, now again you need a reference from Tamheed, isn't I told you You can see it's now the fourth narration, but it's already volume 15, page 347. So he said, وَرَوَاهُ كَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ مُتَلَفِّعَات بِالْعَيْنِ. That most of the students of Imam Malik rahmallah, they transmitted it as متلفعات with the ain. So Imam Yahya is transmitting it as متلففات, but most of the others, they are transmitting it as متلفعات. So he said that many others. How many? What's the meaning of many? Maybe it could be 10 students from all those who transmitted the Muwatta. That's also many, isn't it? Subjective. But Allama Abul Walid Baji, he attributed this to the majority of transmitters. He said, "Wal akthar ala mutalaffi'at." So there's a difference between many and majority, isn't it? Many of you will agree that there's a difference between many and majority. So now we know, and this is the additional benefit. Also from this, you have to understand, you can't just open one commentary of hadith or one commentary of tafsir and then think you can understand. Look at how many commentaries you have to go through. You have to look how all these different scholars, what they had to say about it, gather all these different turuq, etc. So he's mentioning, wal akthar ala mutalaffi'at. The most of those who transmitted us from Imam Malik rahmallah, they transmitted it with the word mutalaffi'at. So that differs with how we just read it here in the Muwatta, because in Yahya ibn Yahya's script and transmission of the Muwatta, it's mutalaffifat, but most of his colleagues, most of the others transmitted from Imam Malik, they transmitted it as mutalaffi'at. So now right there, I told you to write mutalaffifat and mutalaffi'at, right under mutalaffi'at. Most students of Imam Malik, they transmitted it like this here. Likewise, Qadi Iyāzāt rahmallah in Mashariq al-Anwar, he also says, وَرَوَاهُ أَكْثَرُ أَصْحَابِ الْمُوَطَّةِ, that most of the students of the Muwatta, they all transmitted it as mutalaffi'at. But now, okay, Qadi Iyaz is mentioning it, Allama Abul Walid, not that we don't doubt it, but now it's going to become support for Hanafis. So let's just confirm it, because now, Hanafis, we want to make sure, we don't, although they're so reputable people are telling us, but we want to confirm it for ourselves. So now we're going to explore, and we're going to look at how all the other students of Imam Malik who quoted this here, how they quoted it. So we are looking at all the mutaba'at of Yahya ibn Yahya. So this time I'm not giving you the chart like how I done in the first narration. I told you that our what we learned from our asātidha, what was entrenched in us from Fazlur Rahman, was that make the students do the work. So you're not students, you are participants. I'm the student, I'm learning from you. So, but make the participants do the work. So I told you it would have taken me to do this here. It will take me maximum 3 minutes. I just we have admins both sides. I can even tell someone to assess. They would have written everything, and I would have just uploaded a chart for you. But what we learn from our asātidha is that you have to do the work. So please pay attention and write the name of each student of Imam Malik that I quote, and then please write the reference also. So for now, you can write it however you want, and then, but please after that, try to put it into a table form, and then either post it on the group. And if you're shy to post it on a group, then either send it to me privately, whether it's through email or whether it's through WhatsApp. But please, for your own good, try to do this work. It's very, very senior ulama taught us this methodology of teaching. And so Mulana Fazlur Rahman, he used to quote it a lot from his teacher, Mulana Habibur Rahman. And he would also quote this here from Mulana Anwar Shakir. You see, yesterday when they were asking me for the reference, I said, go back and take the screenshot. So by right, I was supposed to actually say that go to Tartibul Madarik and look for it between these 3 pages, and then you between these few pages, and then post it. But I made it easy. I gave the reference. So now all you have to do is just go and post it. So this is how takhassus and specializing in a postgraduate course works, that now you no more get fed. Alhamdulillah, by now I know fully well all of you who are present. I know those of you who stay for the extra time, etc. But I just want to confirm if my estimation and the guess which I have on your isti'adad. So Hazrat Mulana Fazlur Rahman, he says, he actually very often says this here, especially before exam. He says that without an exam, a teacher can very accurately tell you who is the brightest in the class, and who understands the best, and who captures everything. And then he say the test is only there, ilzamun lil khasam, to prove the point. So he's saying that even without the test, the teacher will be able to tell you who deserves the first position, who deserves the second position. But that's if you are teaching in person. Now, unfortunately, teaching online, so I won't be able to guess accurately. So therefore, please assist me in understanding your isti'adad by making this chart. So nevertheless, sorry, I digress a lot in this lesson. So We have Imam Malik as the teacher, and now we're looking at all the students of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So the one student was Yahya ibn Yahya, and he quoted it as Mutalaffifat. Now let's look, okay, now some of these books are mafqud. Some of the muwattas of the other scholars are mafqud. So but at least let us go through those makhtutat which are in our which are available, or those prints which are easily accessible. So you remember Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri, and there's a particular thing about him. If you forgot about it, then go write it in the go back to the prelude. I'm not going to ask now because we need to rush. There's so much to discuss. So Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri, when we go through his transmission of the Muwatta, we find that definitely he transmitted it as Mutalaffa'at with the ain. So this here is on page 282 of his Muwatta, of his transmission of the Muwatta. And the reason why it becomes page 282, you can see it's just right in the beginning of the Muwatta, is because of the whole long introduction before that. So whether you're writing in full or whether you're making the chart, so you write as one student of Imam Malik. He's saying Mutalaffa'at with the ain. Now we go to another student who's transmitting the Muwatta from Imam Malik, and that is Suwayd ibn Sa'id al-Hadathani. So when we go through his Muwatta, then again we find on page 43 of the Darul Gharb al-Islami print, he also transmitted it from Imam Malik rahimahullah with the word Mutalaffa'at. Then we go now to the transmission of Yahya ibn Bukair. So his riwayah, it has been printed but very recently. So unfortunately we didn't as yet get the print. Inshallah, make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the means that we can get the printed. But for now we have to just go to the manuscript. So on the manuscript it's very, very clearly written as Mutalaffa'at. So you can write his name also as Mutalaffa'at. So these are three other students. I told you that just for our context, we can say three colleagues, although they're not really colleagues in the full sense of the word, but three colleagues of Yahya who are transmitting it as Mutalaffa'at with a ain. Now, since we don't have the other prints or the other manuscripts of the Muwatta to see how the others have transmitted it from Imam Malik, we now need to see, okay, let's look others when they quoted from Imam Malik and narrated it in their books, then how did they quote from those students of Imam Malik? So more specifically, let's look at the authors of the Sihah Sitta. The authors of the Sihah Sitta, you know now, by now that all these narrations comes in the Sihah Sitta, and that's the point which we're trying to establish, and I'm trying to emphasize that learn the narrators here, you know the narrators of the Sihah Sitta. Learn the meaning of the āḥadīth here, you automatically get to know the āḥadīth of the Sihah Sitta. And that is why that if you do all, if you go through the whole Kitab al-Salah, especially if you only done Mishkat, then very simple, inshallah, very easy. You can go through Tirmidhi, you can go through Abu Dawud, and you can get asānīd. And inshallah, it will be very short asānīd in those kitabs as well. So nevertheless, here we're looking at the Sihah Sitta, that they all transmitted this year. But obviously the authors of the Sihah Sitta, they did not meet Imam Malik rahimahullah. So they are transmitting from students of Imam Malik. So let's see which students they are transmitting from. So we open Sahih al-Bukhari. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he says, حدثنا Abdullah ibn Maslama an Malik. So if I had time, I would have asked you what's his surname. But now there's no time. So حدثنا Abdullah ibn Maslama al-Qanabi, he is transmitting from Imam Malik. So write this name here. Abdullah ibn Maslama. Okay, first wait to hear how he transmits it, then you can write it. So Abdullah ibn Maslama and Abdullah ibn Yusuf. This is how Imam Muslim, he makes tahweel in the sanad. So the sanad goes, حدثنا Abdullah ibn Maslama an Malik وحدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف قال أخبرنا مالك عن يحيى بن سعيد. So exact same sanad. They transmitting from Imam Malik with the exact same sanad. So حدثنا عبد الله بن مسلمة عن مالك وحدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف قال أخبرنا مالك عن يحيى بن سعيد عن عمرة بنت عبد الرحمن عن عائشة قالت إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي الصبح فينصرف النساء متلفعات. So you can see they are transmitting it as متلفعات. So now put their names also, they are under متلفعات. Abdullah ibn Maslama is also transmitting it as متلفعات. Abdullah ibn Yusuf is also transmitting it as متلفعات. This is how it comes in Sahih al-Bukhari. Put the reference, Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 1, page 173. Now Imam Muslim rahimahullah, so he narrates from two teachers of his, and these two teachers of his transmit from one student of Imam Malik rahimahullah. But now these two teachers of Imam Muslim, they transmitted differently from Imam Malik, from the student of Imam Malik. So you understand how it is that you have Imam Muslim and then you have his two teachers. Then you have they narrating from a student of Imam Malik. So that's the second link. And then the student of Imam Malik is transmitting from Imam Malik. But both these teachers of Imam Muslim, they are transmitting it differently. So he says, حدثنا نصر بن علي. So this is the first teacher. He's quoting from Nasr ibn Ali. And then the second teacher is, he says, وإسحاق بن موسى الأنصاري. The second teacher is إسحاق بن موسى الأنصاري. So two teachers are transmitting it. 2 or 3 teachers are now quoting it. Now they are quoting from a student of Imam Malik. قالا حدثنا معن. So they are transmitting it from Ma'an. So now, and then it's the same sanad. An Malik, an Yahya ibn Sa'id, an Amra, and Aisha. But now both of these teachers transmitted it differently from Ma'an. So Nasr ibn Ali, he transmitted it as Mutalafi'at. So now in your notes, you can put there Ma'an according to Nasr ibn Ali. So you can see, if you're making a chart, if you got there, you got all the different names, then who's transmitting it as Mutalafi'at, then you can put Ma'an. So the Ma'an also transmitted it from Imam Malik as Mutalafi'at. But this here is according to how Nasr ibn Ali quoted it from him, Al-Jahdami. But Ishaq ibn Musa, he quoted it as Mutalaffifat. So now, if you put it as headings like I told you, so far under Mutalaffifat, you only have Yahya, isn't? Now you can put Ma'an, but put Ma'an according to Ishaq ibn Musa al-Ansari. So this is from Sahih Muslim. Now Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah, he also transmitted via Ishaq ibn Musa al-Ansari from Ma'an. So let's see how he's transmitting it. So and then he transmits it from 2 students of Imam Malik. So he says حدثنا قتيبة عن Malik. So here you have Qutayba narrating from Imam Malik. Okay, and for the reference, you can put Sahih Muslim, volume 1, page 446. Now here you have Qutayba who's narrating from Imam Malik. But then he says, وَحَدَّثَنَا الْأَنصَارِ. So he just says Al-Ansari. When he's just saying Al-Ansari, it's referring to Ishaq ibn Musa Al-Ansari. Now he's quoting again Ishaq ibn Musa Al-Ansari. But look what, so now he says, حَدَّثَنَا مَعًا. So in his primary narration, he quotes it from the words of Ishaq ibn Musa Al-Ansari, Mutalaffifat. So again, he's quoting it. But after that, he says, Qutayba, he narrated it from Imam Malik as Mutalaffi'at. So Qutayba, you put his name also on Mutalaffi'at. So now on this side here where you have Mutalaffifat, you have Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, according to most manuscripts and according to how the main commentators attributed to him. And then you have Ma'an, according to the transmission of Ishaq ibn Musa. Now on a side note here, yesterday we spoke about Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, isn't? So many times in the asānīd, you will just come across the name Al-Ansari. Like here, they say, Haddathana Al-Ansari. Now, who could it be referring to? So when Imam Tirmidhi uses it for his teacher, then always remember it refers to Ishaq ibn Musa. It cannot refer to Yahya ibn Sa'id. So, and in this here, you can see this is a clear proof. Imam Muslim, rahimahullah, he took the full name. He said Ishaq ibn Musa. If I had time, I would ask you that who is being referred to here, how you know it's not Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, but I don't have time to ask you. The way you know that it's not Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari is because Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, as we mentioned yesterday, he was a tabi'i. So he came very late after Imam Tirmidhi. Imam Tirmidhi did not meet him directly. So it's impossible. So always remember this here. This is the golden principle, and write this principle down and remember this principle. If you didn't do takhassus fil hadith, then always remember this one principle. It will save you from lots and lots of errors, and it will save you from lots of embarrassment. So please write down this principle. It might seem so simple, but great muhaddithin, they didn't consider this principle, and thereafter scholars, they need to make a rad upon them. So always keep in mind this principle, that the first step in trying to determine who a narrator is look at his position in the chain. So the first step, when you want to know that only the surname is used, or only a title is used, but so many other narrators have this title, so many other titles have this surname, so many other narrators have this attributed like this here. So the first step is look at his position in the chain. Look at who is the student and who is the teacher, who is narrating from this, who is narrating this particular narration from him, and who is he quoting it from. That's the very first step. It might seem so simple, but senior muhaddithin, they forgot about this principle. Abdurrahman Mubarak Puri in Tuhfatul Ahfadhi, he mentioned, فالحاصل أن الترمذي إذا قال في شيوخه الأنصاري فيعني بإسحاق بن موسى الأنصاري لا غير فاحفظ هذا فإنه نافع. Always remember this, that when Imam Tirmidhi is saying Al-Ansari, then it has to refer to Ishaq ibn Musa. It cannot refer to Yahya ibn Sa'id because Imam Tirmidhi did not meet Yahya ibn Sa'id. So then Mubarak Puri, he then refutes a scholar. And the scholar here, he didn't take into consideration this principle, which seems so simple, but because he didn't take this principle into consideration, therefore he made this blunder. So look at what Mubarak Puri then writes thereafter. لذلك قد وقع في مغلطة عظيمة وهي أنه قال في باب ماء البحر أنه طهور ما لفظه قوله الأنصاري هو يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري. He assumed that it's Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. So then Mubarak Puri, he says, العجب أنه من هذه الغفلة الشديدة كيف جوز أن الأنصاري هذا هو يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري والأنصاري هذا هو شيخ الترمذي فإنه قال حدثنا الأنصاري ويحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري من صغار التابعين وبين الترمذي وبينه مفاوز تنقطع فيها أعناق المطايا فهل يمكن أن يقول الترمذي حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري كلا ثم العجب على العجب. So you can see, because it seems like such a simple principle, but keep it in mind that it might sound simple, but the challenge is to keep this principle in mind. Always look at the position of the narrator in the sanad. You'll save yourself from lots of mistakes. You'll save yourself from lots of errors. And then another point to mention here is that you notice I'm quoting from Tuhfatul Ahwadi. So normally we prohibit the final year students or those who are not doing takhassus from referring to this commentary unless you have a good relationship with your teacher and you can ask him if anything seems doubtful. Because those of you who read this kitab, you know, actually you can see here that he's quoting a rad against one of the Hanafi ulama. So there are lots of attacks on the Hanafi madhab in general, and there are also lots of attacks on the Hanafi ulama in particular. So it's not safe if you didn't do takhassus to read this kitab. And that is why I always stress this point. Always discuss, and I wrote it in the letter, in the very first letter, that always discuss with your asātidah which commentaries to use, because some commentaries just copy from other commentaries, some commentaries discuss the Arabic, some commentaries discuss go into details on the asānīd. If that's not your temperament, if to know about all of that, then you're wasting your time buying that. And finally, you don't tell a student buy Fathul Bari, he's not going to have time to read it. So you advise according to you have to take into consideration a lot of different points when advising. So don't go and tell people that this is a very good commentary of Tirmidhi, because it will confuse them more. So nevertheless, coming back to our point, so now we're trying to show that the students of Imam Malik, they all transmitted it as متلفعات. So now we go to Sunan Nasa'i. So Imam Nasa'i rahmallah, he transmits from another student of Imam Malik rahmallah. He says, أنبأ قتيبة بن سعيد. So he's quoting from قتيبة بن سعيد. عن مالك عن يحيى بن سعيد عن أمرة عن عائشة. You can see how many asānīd automatically, you know, you just have to learn the students of Imam Malik, and you from Sihah Sitta. And in that way, you can become a hafiz of hadith. You'll know thousands and thousands and thousands. Till today, there are people who I know who are relatively very young, and they know like literally thousands and thousands and thousands of asānīd. So it's so simple that you just learn the student. All of you by now will know Malik, Yahya ibn Sa'id, Amra, Aisha. Now just put different names there, Qutayba, etc. And then you know so many different asānīd. So yeah, he's quoting from Qutayba ibn Sa'id, and then the narration goes, إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي الصبح فينصرف النساء متلفعات. So again, he's also transmitting it as متلفعات. Then we look at how Imam Abu Dawud rahmallah, so he brings the same standard of Bukhari, Qa'nabi, and Malik, and again, so that from Sunan Nasa'i, it's volume 1, page 478, so you can write that reference. Sunan Abi Dawud, it's Qa'nabi, so he also brings Mutalaffi'at, so same sanad, and Malik and Yahya ibn Sa'id and Amra bint Abdurrahman and Aisha, in kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yusalli subha yansarif an-nisa mutalaffi'at. So he also brings the word mutalaffi'at. So now we learn 6 points. If you want to, you can either keep in mind these 6 points or either write them down. That some manuscripts of Yahya have the word mutalaffi'at. That's the first point. Some manuscripts, they have the word mutalaffi'at with a ain. Second point, most of the accurate manuscripts of Yahya, it has the word mutalaffifat. And also, if you want to put this as a third point, or you want to put it as also in the second point, many of the most senior scholars of the Maliki madhab and the experts of the Muwatta, they inform us that definitely Yahya ibn Yahya, he transmitted it as Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, he transmitted it as mutalaffifat with 2 fas. Point. The next point, Yahya is not the only one who's transmitting it as mutalaffifat. There is a possibility that Ma'an also transmitted it as mutalaffifat, because Ishaq ibn Moosa al-Ansari, he transmitted it from Ma'an, from Malik, as mutalaffifat, but others transmitted it from him as mutalaffi'at. So therefore we're saying there's a possibility. And point number 5, the authors of the Sihah Sitta, whenever they quoted from students of Imam Malik, then from all the other students, besides Ishaq ibn Musa from Ma'an, from all the other students of Imam Malik, they quoted it as Mutalafi'at, with the ain. And point number 6, most of those who transmitted the Muwatta, they also transmitted it as Mutalafi'at. So until now, you can come to the conclusion that like almost everybody transmitted it from Imam Malik as Mutalafi'at. And therefore, this is the word which is going to have to be preferred. So, okay, now this is all where we were looking at Imam Malik, so the student of Imam Malik. But irrespective of what we are going to take, so firstly, you only have Yahya and probably, so we're not saying that you have Ma'an, and probably Ma'an. They are the only ones who's transmitting it as Mutalaffifat. Everyone else is transmitting it from Imam Malik rahmallah as Mutalaffi'at. Now, irrespective who's you going to prefer, whether you're going to prefer Yahya over all the other eminent and senior scholars and students of Imam Malik, or whether you are going to prefer all of them over Yahya, it's only transmitted from Imam Malik with the word Mutalaffifat. There is no one else who transmitted it with the word Mutalaffifat. So understand the 2 points here. That number 1, you have only one or probably 2 students transmitting it from Imam Malik as Mutalaffifat. Point number 2, besides Imam Malik, there is no one else from who it has been transmitted that they transmitted it as Mutalaffifat. So this is what Ibn Rajab Hanbali rahmallah mentions in Fathul Bari. I told you we are not competent enough to negate it, and we just follow the Hufaz of Hadith. So in Fathul Bari of Ibn Rajab in volume 3 on page 224, وروي عن مالك متلففات بفاءين والمشهور عنه متلفعات أيضا بالعين كرواية الأكثرين. Like everybody else, basically. رواية الأكثرين, everybody else, they transmitted it as متلفعات. So now Ibn Rajab Hanbali told us this point, but we still need to go and inspect and see, okay, it's from Aisha radiyallahu anha. How did the others transmit it from Aisha radiyallahu anha? So I quoted from Imam Malik rahimahullah via the authors of the Sihah Sitta. And we looked at the different students of Imam Malik rahimahullah, and alhamdulillah, I trust that the dedicated from amongst you made the table. Now we're looking at how others besides Imam Malik rahimahullah, the contemporaries of Imam Malik, how they transmit this from higher links. So now we looked at the mutaba'at of Yahya. Now we are looking at the mutaba'at of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So now when you're writing it, you can decide how you're going to write it. Now it's in place of Imam Malik. So now a different person and narrating it. So going to these higher links, we find that others besides Imam Malik, when they transmitted the Siyah, then they also transmitted it with the words mutalaffi'at. So for example, in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, they quoted it with the sanad which goes to Imam Zuhri, and he narrates from Urwa. So inshallah, by now you should know about a lot about Imam Zuhri also, and you know about Urwa a lot, inshallah. I trust that after the lesson, you're at least taking out time to memorize and to learn about this. So you know about these two, you know the dates of birth, probably the difference, maybe an incident about them, etc. Nevertheless, when they are transmitting it, now look at the words. So we'll quote from Imam Muslim رحمه الله. حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وعمر الناقر وزهير بن حرب كلهم عن سفيان بن عيينة. قال عمرو حدثنا سفيان بن عيينة عن الزهري عن عروة عن عائشة. So that was from Amra. This here is from Urwa from Aisha. We're just going to that link to make it easier. So from Amra, everyone else besides one possible narration from Imam Malik, or a second possible besides one or two possible transmissions from Imam Malik, everyone else transmitted it as Mutalaffi'at. Now we're looking, okay, Urwa also transmitted it. He's the second person who was the most, the strongest from Aisha radiallahu anha. إن نساء المؤمنات كن يصلين الصبح مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم يرجعن متلفعات. So can you see? Again, it comes as Mutalaffi'at. Okay, so now we found it. Okay, we have, so now we're cutting short here a little bit to make it easier, but I'm sure none of you want to wait till Fajr. So, okay, we have some who are saying Mutalaffifat, some who are saying Mutalaffi'at. So what's the difference between these two words? Is it worth it to make all this hair splitting and to go into all this detail? So we find that Ibn Abdul Bar rahmallah and Alama Batal Yawsi rahmallah, they both claim that these two words have the same meaning. Wal ma'na wahid. So this is in Tamhid, volume 15, page 347, and in the Mushkilat Muwatta Malik ibn Anas on page 38. If والمعنى واحد, then it means I wasted half an hour of your time, isn't it? Why am I going through all this detail? If it has the same meaning, it has the same meaning. Why must I now tell you this person is transmitting it differently, this person? So now you're teaching Muwatta, one day you think, okay, the Tamhid is the best. Let me just concentrate on this one commentary, and I'll move on from there, and I'll explain to the students. You're going to come to this conclusion, والمعنى واحد, not realizing that it's going to then, you're going to have a problem in proving your madhab. So you need to go through more. Okay, firstly, so they're saying, well, ma'na wahid. So therefore, okay, say that you decide, okay, I'm going to use Tamhid, and let me also use Fathul Bari. Imagine such a great commentary of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah. Let me even use Imam Nawawi. So, mashallah, you're using very concrete commentaries, but they're all taking back from Tamhid. So they, Ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah, said, well, ma'na wahid. So now you will find that these commentators now, they are using one word in exchange of the other. So the greatest commentary of Bukhari, Ibn Hajar rahmallah, he said, قوله متلفعات بمروطين أي متلففات. متلفعات, it means متلففات. This is in Fathul Bari, volume 1, page 183. So it shows that both of them are synonyms. Likewise, the word متلفعات comes in Sahih Muslim. So let's go to the greatest or the most famous commentary of Sahih Muslim, Imam Nawawi rahmallah. قوله متلفعات هو بالعين المهملة بعد الفاء أي متجللات ومتلففات. They say that it has the same meaning. Likewise, in Sunan Abi Dawud, the commentary there, والتلفف قد يجيء بمعنى التلفع. So both have the same meanings. Likewise, in the commentary of Sunan Ibn Majah, متلفعات بعين مهملة بعد الفاء متلففات. Can you see so many commentators telling you it all has one and the same meaning? So then now you made so much tahqiq, you're teaching, you went through Fathul Bari, you went through the commentary of Abu Dawud, you went through, and what conclusion you came? That it all has the same meaning. However, there are others who mentioned that the meanings are different. So, okay, if the meanings are different, then now we have to see, okay, how do they differ? So we find that there are those scholars who mentioned that talaffu' very specifically means covering the head. So Alama Abul Walid Baji, rahimahullah, he agrees, okay, both of these words are similar, but there is the subtle difference between the two. والمعنى متقارب إلا أن التلفع يستعمل مع تغطية الرأس. The talaffu' is used when you cover the head. And besides him, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah, he quotes this here from Ibn Habib. وفي شرح الموطأ لابن حبيب التلفع لا يكون إلا بتغطية الرأس والتلفف يكون بتغطية الرأس وكشفه. Can you see what a big difference this here is? Imagine you are female and you cover your whole body but you leave your hair open. And then you go out. Well, it even be jais. It's definitely against haya, isn't? What a huge difference it makes. So he's saying talaffuf means covering the entire body, but it could be that they cover their heads, or it might not be that they cover their heads. But talaffu' very specifically shows you that these females, when they came for the Fajr Salah, they covered their heads. So it, from this one word, we already now deduce that the heads of these females were covered with the same cloth. And this here is very, very important because of the next word. You can see the next word, بِمُرُوطِهِنَّ. So you have to understand this here. And that is why we're showing you that there are so many who transmitted it with the word talaffu'. So the first benefit we got is that they very specifically mentioned the word talaffu'. It shows that these females covered their heads. Now, because this scholars mentioned it, so you find other commentators, they did take this here into consideration, and therefore they explained it when they were explaining this narration. فقاضي عياض in مشارق الأنوار, he says, والتلفع يستعمل في الالتحاف مع تغطية الرأس. والتلفف قريب منه لكن ليس فيه تغطية الرأس. Can you see? And then he says, وقد يجيء بمعنى التلفع وتغطية الرأس. But when you use متلففات, if you have to just read this narration of the Muwatta, a person could understand that the females were coming and their heads were open, their hair was open, and that's how they were coming for the Fajr Salah. But once we have the word talaffu', now we understand this is something which is very great. It's a very important thing for us to understand. Do you understand that the heads were covered? And then Ibn Hajar rahmallah in Fathul Bari, والتلفع يستعمل في الالتحاف مع تغطية الرأس وقد يجيء بمعنى تغطية الرأس فقط. So this is the very important point. Talaffu', it does come in the meaning of just covering the head. So the first benefit we got of doing all this long research and finding that, okay, talaffu' comes, that many others transmitted it, almost everybody besides Yahya ibn Yahya, and probably Ma'an everyone else who transmitted this, whether it's from Umrah or whether it's via Urwa, the most senior narrators, they all transmitted it as talaffu'. The very great benefit we got is that now we understand that these females, their heads were covered. That's the first meaning of talaffu'. Now look at the second meaning of talaffu'. The second meaning of talaffu' is to cover the face. So there are many commentators who specifically mention that the word mutalaffa'at, it comes in the meaning of covering the faces. So here I'm just going to quote now from 3 different scholars. The first is Allama Kirmani in Al-Kawakib al-Darari, volume 4, page 218. He said, هو ما يغطى الوجه ويتلحف. That the meaning of it is that to cover the face. Likewise, Allama Badruddin Aini rahmallah, قول متلفعات حال أي متلحفات من التلفع وهو شد اللفاع وهو ما يغطي الوجه. So this here you can see it means to cover the face. ولأنه شيخ كشميري رحمه الله عرف الشذي التلفع إرخاء الثوب على الوجه. What's the meaning of التلفع? To let the cloth hang down over the face. This here is such an important point that we're getting from this narration. And in fact, because of them mentioning that the word talaffu' showing that it means to cover the face, some scholars, they incorrectly, so remember, they incorrectly deduce from this narration that a female can perform salah with a niqab, because the word mutalaffi'at is used, and mutalaffi'at means their faces were covered. So that means they perform salah with their faces covered. So what does that mean? Is that their forehead and the nose were covered. So therefore, a female can perform. It's incorrect, remember? So Qadi Iyad rahmallah, he mentions in Ikmal al-Mu'allim in volume 2 on page 609, واستدل بعضهم فيها على جواز صلاة المرأة مخمرة فمها وأنفها ولا حجة فيه. So I told you it's incorrect. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is just imagine how they understood talaffu' means to cover the face. So this is such an important point. So that's the second benefit. So now we know, we went through all these different narrations. Mashallah, you took the sacrifice of knowledge and you sat and you listen. You understand that the heads were covered. You understand that the faces were covered. Now let's look at the third meaning of talaffu', and it means to cover the entire body. So not only the heads were covered, not only the faces were covered, the entire body was covered. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentions in Fath al-Bari, قال الأسمعي التلفع أن تشتمل بالثوب. تشتمل, the female, she covers herself with a thawb حتى تجلل به جسدك. So you can see, cover your entire body. So this is the meaning of talaffu'. So Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi in Awn al-Ma'bud, now he explained that what's the meaning of this word talaffu'? It refers to mustatirat wujuhahunna wa abdanahunna. That the entire bodies were covered, their faces were also covered. In we say that from our first explanation, that their heads were also covered. Now that you understand all of these different meanings, now you can understand. So from teaching Muwaṭṭa, we're teaching you Sahih Sitta also. That's why I said, and we can do a riwayatan, everything in Sahih Sitta with brief explanations there. So in Sahih al-Bukhari, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he used this narration that a female can cover herself just with one piece of cloth. But obviously, now we're not going to go into the details of this explanation, whether it's correct, whether it's incorrect, what the Hanafis commentators mentioned, just to show you that this meaning of talaffu' is so broad that Imam Malik, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, such a great scholar, looked at the chapter, Babun fi kam tusalli al-mar'atu fi thiyab. How much cloth should a female have to perform? Thereafter he says, he goes from Ikramah, لو وارت جسدها في ثوب لأجزأته. And then he quotes this exact same narration. حدثنا أبو اليمان قال أخبرنا شعيب عن الزهري قال أخبرني عروة أن عائشة قالت لقد كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الفجر فيشهد معه نساء من المؤمنات متلفعات في مروطهن. So you can see, so he's using this here, basically coming to the commentary so you can understand it better. Allama Kirmani rahmallah, he explains in Al-Kawakib al-Darari, فإن قلت ما المستفاد منه, what is Imam Bukhari trying to prove here? So then I will say, صلاتهن في ثوب واحد. He's trying to prove that a female can just perform salah with one cloth. Obviously, like I told you, we're not going into the fiqh. I'm just trying to show that the word mutalaffi'at, it has this huge and broad and encompassing meaning. So Allama Badruddin Aini rahimahullah said, لأن المستفاد منه صلاتهن في مروط والمرط ثوب واحد كما سنفسره عن قريب. So that would mean that they had this one huge cloth, and this one huge cloth covered their heads, and it covered their faces, and it covered their entire bodies. So that's the benefit of this whole long discussion, proving that mutalaffi'at means that that many all others they transmitted it with the words متلفعات. So you can also see how much research just to understand one word of a hadith. This is the amount of research you need to do. So now you keep all this in mind that the heads were covered, the faces were covered, and the entire bodies were covered. Now let's look at the next word. بِمُرُوطِهِنَّ. So مُرُوطِهِنَّ, it means with their shawls. Now we'll explain. It's maybe specific shawls. So it's the plural of the word mirt. And mirt, it refers to a huge shawl, not a small shawl. Because remember, we're proving that it's covering everything. It's covering heads, faces, and entire body. So you have to know that it refers to a huge shawl. So Ibn Abdul Barr rahmallah, he said, well, murot aksiyat al-suf. It's woolen pieces of cloth. So it's mentioned it is made from a wool. And it's sometimes said that mirt, it's a square woolen piece of cloth. And the sides of it is made with fur. So it's embedded with fur on the sides. So this is how Ibn Abdul Barr rahmallah explains it in At-Tamheed in volume 15 on page 347. So he's mentioning the word suf, that is what wool. And the sides probably that has fur. So it might seem like this is very specific. However, others they mention that it could be made from various other types of material, the other commentators. So Allama Badruddin Aini in his commentary of Abu Dawud, he says جمع مرط بكسر الميم وهو كسام من صوف أو خز أو كتان. So whether it's from cloth, from wool, whether it's from silk, or whether it's from linen, any kind of cloth basically. So it's important to note that now you know it's not very specified. Allama Batal Yosim, he presented proof to show that it could be used for other material like silk. So he said والمرط أكسية تتخذ من صوف والخز وجاء في تفسيرها في هذا الحديث أن أكسية من صوف. So he's saying that okay, yeah, maybe Ibn Abdul Barr probably is referring to him that they are saying that it's from suf. So it might seem like as if it is being specified. So then he says that look at the poem of Imr al-Qais that he mentioned some poetry there that in the poetry it comes ذيل مرط مرحل. So then he explains that the word mirtia, it comes in the meaning of silk. So it shows that it could even come in the meaning of silk. And then on the color of the shawl, so some they say that it was a green shawl, others they say it was a black shawl. Some says al-mirtu wa thawb al-akhdar. So imagine all the females coming with green shawls for Fajr Salah. Others they are saying no, that aksiya min sha'r al-aswad, that it's actually made from black fur. So and then we learn also that it was a square. So Ibn Daqiq al-Eid in his commentary of Umda, he said زاد بعضهم في صفتها أنها تكون مربعة. So it was square. So now we mentioned how it covers the face and the head, and I mentioned that it's a very important word because now look how some of the commentators they explain this word mirt. They explain, so in Umdatul Qari, Allama Badruddin Aini in volume 7 on page 498, he said قوله بمروطهن يتعلق بمتلفعات ويجمع مرط بكسر الميم وهو كسام من صوف أو خز يعتذر به. So now what does it mean? That you weight on the lower portion of your body. The mirt is worn on the lower portion. It's worn like how you say a lungi. It's worn like how the ihram is worn. It covers the lower portion of the body. It so others they mention Ibn al-Arabi in Tanwir al-Hawalik, huwa al-izar. It refers to a trouser or something which just wraps the waist. So therefore it's so. And then he mentions from Ibn Habib that المرد كساء صوف رقيق خفيف مربع كان النساء في ذلك الزمان يأتزرن به. That the females would wear it as the trouser, but then you have to keep into consideration what ويتلففن from the because of the word متلفعات. You understand that they didn't just wear it. Imagine if you just have to look at this apparent meaning, you'll say that the females were coming and the whole upper body was open because of this word. So متلففات, it means cover. Murut means cover the lower body. So that's if you're just taking the word talaffuf. So therefore we have to take the word talaffu'. And then Jawhari, so actually even from the lexicographers in As-Sahaf al-Lugha, he mentioned that والمرط بالكسر واحد المروط وهي أكثر من صوف أو خز كان يعتذر بها. That it was used to cover the lower portion of the body. So therefore the word talaffu' is so important because it shows us that it's not only the lower portion of the body, and it's not also only just the top portion of the body, rather it refers to the entire body. It means that they covered their faces, it means that they covered their heads, and it means that they covered their entire bodies. So all this benefit to how we got it We got it just because of that whole long research in determining that the word that was used was talaffu', and the word is not talaffuf. So inshallah, we'll stop here. Jazakumullah khairan. I'm really so indebted to all of you. I don't know how to thank you. You know that it's because you are staying here. If you didn't stay, I would be talking to the walls, isn't? So it's because you all agreed to stay and you're staying, mashallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of your sacrifice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. In our times, we do little sacrifice. The past day to travel, day to traverse, day to undergo so much difficulty, day to undergo hunger, etc. For us, you just stay another extra half an hour, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also benefit us just like how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefited them. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.